The text message glowed on my phone screen, casting a cold, stark light across my face in the otherwise enveloping darkness of our bedroom. It was from Sarah, my fiancée of 3 years, the woman I was supposed to marry in just a month. "Can we talk? Something's come up." My breath hitched in my throat, a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach. Sarah, usually a whirlwind of vibrant energy and effusive communication, had been uncharacteristically quiet and withdrawn for the past few weeks. We were on the cusp of our destination wedding in Napa Valley, a celebration we'd poured our hearts and souls into planning, meticulously curating every detail from the rustic vineyard venue to the delicate lavender sprigs that would adorn the bouquets. Up until recently, our life together, nestled in our cozy, sun-drenched craftsman home in the leafy suburbs of Seattle, felt like an idyllic dream woven from shared laughter and quiet companionship. We, Ben, a 32-year-old architect with a penchant for clean lines and functional design, and Sarah, a 30-year-old kindergarten teacher, whose classroom was a riot of color and joyful chaos, had seemingly built a comfortable and deeply loving partnership. We found solace and joy in the simple rituals of our life, our weekend hikes amidst the majestic peaks of the Cascades, our cozy evenings curled up on the couch with a classic movie, and the unspoken understanding that often passed between us, a silent language of shared affection. Or so I profoundly believed, with every fiber of my being. Sarah and I met at a charity gala, a whirlwind of black ties and glittering gowns. Amidst the polite chatter and clinking champagne glasses, her infectious laughter cut through the noise, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. I was immediately captivated by her genuine warmth, the way her eyes sparkled with kindness, and her uncanny ability to make everyone around her feel truly seen and valued. Our relationship blossomed with an almost effortless grace. Within a year, we were sharing our lives and our small Seattle home, and 2 years later, during a breathtakingly romantic getaway to the rugged Oregon coast, overlooking the crashing waves of the Pacific at sunset, I asked her to be my wife. Her tearful yes, the way she threw her arms around me, and the fierce, unwavering squeeze of her hand that night are memories I had carefully tucked away, believing they would be the foundation of our forever. The first almost imperceptible shift in our dynamic occurred about 6 weeks ago, a subtle tremor in what I thought was an unshakable foundation. Sarah, who had initially been so enthusiastic about every aspect of wedding planning, her Pinterest boards overflowing with ideas, and her voice buzzing with excitement, started becoming increasingly vague and strangely non-committal. When I'd gently inquire about the seating chart, a logistical puzzle I was eager to solve, or the final menu selections, a culinary adventure we were supposed to embark on together, she'd often respond with a dismissive, "I'll get to it, honey. Things have been absolutely hectic at school lately." The vibrancy had faded, replaced by a weary resignation I initially attributed to the usual end-of-school year stress. Then there were the evenings she claimed she was staying late at school, to grade endless stacks of papers or attend mandatory teacher meetings. These late nights, once rare occurrences, were becoming increasingly frequent, stretching later and later into the evening. She'd often come home looking utterly exhausted, her usual bright smile dimmed, and she'd offer little in the way of conversation, often retreating to bed almost immediately. I trusted her implicitly, my faith in her unwavering, so I never seriously questioned her explanations, though a small, almost imperceptible, nagging voice in the back of my mind occasionally whispered a faint note of caution, a feeling I quickly dismissed as pre-wedding jitters on my part. The real unease, the kind that settles deep in your bones and chills you from the inside out, began a few weeks later when I started noticing a series of unfamiliar text messages persistently popping up on her phone screen. They were from someone simply listed as Jake. The messages themselves, when I'd catch a fleeting glimpse, were innocuous enough. A casual, "Hey, how's your day going?" or a simple, "Thinking of you." But something about the sheer frequency of these exchanges, often late, at night, and the almost furtive way Sarah would quickly turn her phone away or minimize the screen when I entered the room, felt undeniably off, a subtle dissonance in the familiar harmony of our life. One Saturday, Sarah announced that she was going to a surprise birthday party for a colleague, a teacher I'd met a few times, and genuinely liked. She got dressed up with an unusual level of care, looking absolutely stunning in a sleek, elegant dress I hadn't seen before, a dress that seemed more appropriate for a date night than a casual birthday gathering. She left with a cheerful, "See you later," and a quick kiss. But something about her demeanor felt strangely forced, the smile a little too bright, the goodbye a touch too rushed, almost as if she were playing a part, reciting lines from a poorly rehearsed script. That night I found myself inexplicably restless, tossing and turning in bed, unable to find the solace of sleep. I eventually gave up and got out of bed, wandering into the living room, the silence of the house amplifying my growing unease. My eyes inadvertently fell on Sarah's laptop, which she had carelessly left open on the coffee table. An email notification silently popped up on the screen. It was from Jake. The subject line, stark and accusatory in its simplicity, read, "Last night was amazing." My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. A cold, paralyzing wave of dread washed over me, stealing my breath and leaving me feeling hollowed out. With a trembling hand, I reached for the laptop and clicked on the email. It was a short but intensely intimate message, filled with veiled references to a deep and special connection, and expressing a palpable anticipation for their next clandestine meeting. The specific details were deliberately vague, but the underlying implication, the unspoken truth, was as sharp and clear as shattered glass. Sarah hadn't been at Lisa's birthday party. I felt like I'd been physically struck. The air knocked out of my lungs. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I frantically scrolled through Sarah's recent emails, a desperate search for answers in the digital breadcrumbs she had unknowingly left behind. There were several exchanges with Jake spanning the past few weeks, a secret correspondence hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly normal life. They spoke of hushed phone calls, stolen moments in time, and a passion that had been unexpectedly rekindled after years of dormant embers. Jake, it chillingly turned out, was Sarah's college boyfriend, her first real love, someone she had always spoken of fondly, but with a definitive sense of closure, a chapter in her past that she had always insisted was firmly and irrevocably closed. The world as I knew it seemed to tilt precariously on its axis, the solid ground beneath my feet suddenly giving way. The woman I was about to marry, the woman I had pledged my life to, the woman I thought I knew more intimately than anyone else in the world, had been leading a clandestine double life, weaving a web of deceit that had ensnared us both. The past. 3 years of our relationship, the foundation upon which we had built our future, flashed before my eyes in a disjointed montage of shared laughter, whispered secrets under starry skies, and heartfelt promises of forever. Every single moment now felt tainted, a carefully constructed lie built on a foundation of profound and heartbreaking deceit. A wave of anger, sharp and intense as a shard of ice piercing my heart, surged through me, quickly followed by a crushing, suffocating sense of betrayal and a deep, aching sadness that threatened to consume me entirely. How could she do this to me? How could I have been so utterly blind, so completely trusting? The carefully constructed image of our perfect life, the future we had so eagerly anticipated, shattered into a million jagged pieces, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage, feeling lost and utterly alone. I spent the remainder of the night in a torturous state of shock and disbelief, replaying every interaction with Sarah over the past few months, desperately searching for clues I had so carelessly missed, for any subtle sign, any fleeting expression that would have hinted at this devastating secret that had been festering beneath the surface of our seemingly happy existence. Sleep remained elusive, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of confusion, hurt, and a gnawing sense of disbelief. The next morning, Sarah returned home around mid-morning, looking remarkably bright and breezy, as if she had just enjoyed a pleasant evening out with friends and nothing untoward had occurred. "Hey, you're up early," she said with a cheerful lilt in her voice, offering me a casual kiss on the cheek, a gesture that now felt utterly hollow and performative. I recoiled slightly, the simple act of her touch now repulsive. "Where were you last night, Sarah?" I asked, my voice flat and cold, devoid of any discernible emotion. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, a fleeting flicker of something unreadable, perhaps fear, perhaps guilt, dancing in her eyes before she quickly masked it with a practiced air of innocence. "I told you, honey, at Lisa's birthday. Party. It was a lot of fun. We went out for drinks afterwards. Lisa's birthday party," I repeated, the disbelief evident in my voice, which was now starting to rise with a tremor of anger. "Or were you with Jake? Tell me the truth." Sarah, her face visibly paled, the carefully constructed cheerful facade crumbling like dry earth, replaced by a stark look of raw fear and undeniable guilt. She didn't answer, her silence hanging heavy in the air, speaking volumes more than any words. "Good. I read your emails, Sarah," I continued, my voice now trembling with a potent cocktail of anger and profound hurt. "I know about you and Jake. I know you've been secretly meeting him, exchanging intimate messages, and lying to me to my face for weeks." Tears immediately welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks in glistening streams. Her body began to shake with silent, convulsive sobs. "Ben, I can explain. Please just let me explain." "Explain what, Sarah?" I interrupted, my voice dripping with bitter sarcasm. "Explain how you could betray me like this, just weeks before we're supposed to stand in front of our family and friends and promise. Forever. Explain how you could look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly." She continued to cry, her voice choked with emotion. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Ben. It just happened. It was a mistake." "Just happened?" I scoffed, the incredulity ringing in my tone. "Sarah, you've been intentionally and deliberately meeting with your ex, engaging in an emotional and likely physical affair, exchanging deeply intimate emails filled with longing and desire, and systematically lying to me. The man you're supposed to marry. That doesn't just happen. That's a series of conscious choices, a calculated act of betrayal." We stood there in a strained and suffocating silence for what felt like an eternity, the weight of the unspoken accusations, and the shattered trust hanging heavy in the air between us, like a tangible barrier. The beautiful dream we had so carefully and lovingly built together was now crumbling into dust before our very eyes, the foundation irrevocably broken. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in our home was thick with an almost palpable tension, a heavy silence punctuated only by Sarah's tearful apologies and my own cold, withdrawn responses. Sarah desperately tried to talk to me, to offer explanations, to beg for forgiveness and understanding, but I found myself unable to truly listen, her words sounding hollow and meaningless in the face of her profound betrayal. The pain was too raw, too deep, a gaping wound that refused to heal. I made the agonizing decision to contact our wedding planner, the woman who had so enthusiastically helped us bring our vision to life, and began the heartbreaking and logistically complex process of canceling our wedding. The financial implications were significant, with numerous non-refundable deposits and contractual obligations, but the thought of standing at the altar with Sarah, knowing the depth of her deception, was utterly unbearable, a violation of everything I believed in. I also sought legal counsel, speaking to a lawyer to understand my rights and options regarding our shared home and intertwined finances. Thankfully, due to my somewhat cautious nature, we had largely kept our finances separate, which, in this unforeseen and devastating situation, simplified things considerably. Sarah eventually moved out a few days later, packing her belongings, in a flurry of tearful apologies, and leaving behind a silence in our once vibrant home that was both deafening in its emptiness and strangely liberating in its finality. She continued to bombard me with texts and voicemails, each message a desperate plea for forgiveness and a second chance, but I found myself unable to respond, the emotional chasm between us now too wide to bridge, driven by an overwhelming need. To escape the suffocating memories that now haunted every corner of our home, I made the difficult decision to put it on the market. The housing market in Seattle was still surprisingly strong, and I clung to the hope of a quick sale, a fresh start in a new space, free from the ghosts of our broken promises. In the interim, I threw myself headfirst into my work, finding a strange sort of solace in the familiar routines and the intellectual challenges of my architectural projects. I also leaned heavily on my close circle of friends for emotional support. Spending evenings out, talking late into the night and desperately trying to find some semblance of normalcy and distraction in my abruptly upended life. One evening, my friend Mark, ever the supportive and pragmatic one, suggested a spontaneous weekend getaway to a rustic cabin nestled deep in the Cascade Mountains. I initially hesitated, the thought of leaving my familiar surroundings feeling daunting, but the overwhelming desire to escape the city and the constant, painful reminders of Sarah's betrayal eventually won out. The weekend in the mountains proved to be exactly what my wounded soul needed. The crisp, clean air, the breathtaking panoramic scenery, and the unwavering camaraderie with my closest friends helped to clear the fog in my head and allowed the first tentative steps of the healing process to begin. A few weeks later, my house sold surprisingly quickly, and I found myself facing the reality of a completely blank slate. I decided to seize the opportunity and finally pursue a long-held dream. I requested a sabbatical from work and made plans to travel extensively for a few months, something I had always yearned to do but had consistently put on hold due to our wedding plans and the perceived constraints of our shared future. I booked a one-way ticket to Europe, a continent that had always held a special allure for me, planning a loosely structured itinerary that would allow me to explore ancient ruins, immerse myself in bustling cities, and hike through breathtaking landscapes. I hoped that this journey of physical and emotional distance would bring me some much-needed peace and a renewed sense of clarity. Just days before my departure, I received a lengthy email from Sarah. It was a surprisingly raw and vulnerable message, expressing her profound and seemingly genuine regret for her actions, and finally acknowledging the immense pain she had inflicted upon me. She admitted that reconnecting with Jake had been a colossal mistake, a fleeting moment of misguided nostalgia that had quickly spiraled into something far more damaging and destructive. She claimed that the time apart had given her perspective and that she now truly understood the depth of her love for me, desperately begging for a chance to talk and explain everything when I returned from my travels. I read her email slowly and carefully, feeling a complex mix of emotions, a lingering sadness for what we had lost, a dull ache of hurt that still resided deep within me, but also a surprising sense of closure. I ultimately decided not to respond. While a part of me might eventually be able to offer forgiveness, I knew with unwavering certainty that I could never truly forget the depth of her betrayal, and the thought of attempting to rebuild the trust that had been so completely and irrevocably shattered felt like an insurmountable task. My solo travels through Europe were nothing short of transformative. I wandered through the ancient streets of Rome, explored the vibrant markets of Marrakesh, and hiked along the stunning Amalfi Coast. I met fascinating people from all walks of life, shared stories and experiences, and, perhaps most importantly, began to rediscover myself. The man I was before our relationship had become so intertwined. When I finally returned to Seattle several months later, I felt like a fundamentally different person. The raw, all-consuming pain of Sarah's betrayal had gradually dulled, replaced by a quiet inner strength and a newfound sense of self-reliance. The future no longer felt daunting, but rather full of possibility. I started a new chapter in my professional life, accepting a challenging and exciting position at a different architectural firm, embracing the fresh perspectives and opportunities that came with it. I reconnected with old friends, forged new and meaningful connections, and even tentatively dipped my toes back into the world of dating, feeling cautiously optimistic about the prospect of finding genuine connection again. One crisp autumn evening, I unexpectedly ran into Sarah at a local coffee shop, a place that had once been our favorite weekend haunt. It was the first time we had seen each other since my departure for Europe. She looked noticeably thinner and carried a palpable air of sadness, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman I had once known. "Ben," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, a hint of nervousness in her tone. "It's good to see you."